On today's episode, we have a part 2 of 2. So if you missed the first one, make sure you go back and watch it. It's amazing. It's with Rahim Fazal, the co-founder and CEO of SV Academy.
Get a front row seat into a CEO's mind as he reviews different prospecting emails and voicemails, and if he'll take a meeting. Your success is our success, so let's get started.
From the heart of Silicon Valley in beautiful San Francisco, California, welcome to the SDR Live podcast with Marcos and Andy.
Okay, we'll start here. Okay, awesome. So these are actually some...
Got some branded slides here. I love this.
You know it. So we actually asked some of our SDR friends to write some emails and some voicemails. And so without further ado, we have three different types of emails and 2 voicemails. So I'll read it for the audience that's listening without the video, but this is more like a cold referral. So the subject line's called Mutual Connections. And they'll say, hey, Rahim, I saw we have many mutual connections on LinkedIn. I'm reaching out because I saw your background leading SV Academy, and I wanted to see, looks like they cut it off, if your team is having discussions around any IT transformation initiatives due to remote work, ? During COVID-19, companies including Outreach, Gong, and SalesLoft are consolidating access to technologies. Example, gets a little bit more technical there, often replacing multiple disparate legacy identity and access management solutions. Do you have time this week, or can you refer me to the right contact? Thanks for your consideration. So maybe we could start from the top. First, initial is the subject line. Would you open it?
Mutual connections, I'd probably open it, but we're not getting started on very exciting footing. It's generic. It's so generic, and I'm already going into the email thinking there's a 90% chance that an SDR is trying to set a meeting with me.
Okay.
Like I'm being sold to, like it's spam, something I don't really need to focus on, because the priming from the way the subject line is constructed.
No, well, you heard it there first, right? Trying to get a meeting. Appreciate that. Any other thoughts? If not, we'll get into the next one.
Well, I think then the next question is like, what would you make the subject line, right?
That's that.
Yeah. So I think like just staying within the spirit of mutual connections, I think if there was a specific mutual connection that you saw that we had, I assume that this person, they're not trying to be disingenuous. Like there is a mutual connection in this scenario. I would use that person's name.
Okay.
That would, seeing like a person's name in the subject line that I felt close to, or I felt a connection with, there was some existing trust, would prime me in a more positive way for response going into the email.
I like that. And quick question. So one of the strategies that I've been trying is adding kind of more flavor and just more, like you said, prime that excitement or that feeling coming into the email with my subject line. Sometimes I have I end it with question marks, or ask a question, or I end it with obviously an exclamation mark. And sometimes this is going to be a little more controversial, like your thoughts on, is using an emoji. What are your thoughts on those?
I mean, I think you touched on the point of the subject line is priming and conversion, right? Open rate. And I could see how it could entice me to open it, depending on what else was in the subject line in addition to the emoji. I could see that it could work towards priming me well as well. I think the thing to understand is that like authenticity, I don't want to get on a soapbox here, but I will just say maybe a temporary. Well, okay. So the value of an SDR, right? When I talked to my CEO friends when we were starting SV Academy, the value of the SDR is to them is like, listen, in a world of increased automation, when you have all these marketing systems that can automatically generate outreach and cadences and connection, there's actually a greater desire with increased automation for business users to have a human-centered connection, which is the reason why cold calling and getting on the phone works. It's because we aren't getting a lot of phone calls. And there is, perhaps unconsciously, and in a lot of ways, think about COVID, where people are, business users are stuck at home in perhaps a chaotic home environment. Mm-hmm. They're not seeing their friends. They're not going out for dinners and happy hours, and they're obviously not going to conferences, and that's not going to happen for a while for sure, right? And a lot of us are just talking to our kids or our spouses or our team members, and that's about it right now. Mm. So actually in this moment, there is a real, I think, desire for human connection. And I think it's not just any human connection, but it's really sort of authentic human connection. And what I mean by authenticity is that when you're asking the question about the emojis, when you're doing it, if it's just a sort of a hack in order to get to the next step in the funnel, right? And in this case, it would be, just get the open rate up, right? You might hit that number, but then you won't hit the next milestone because it's very clear that this is just, for example, I saw we have many mutual connections on LinkedIn. Well, that's awesome because that's why I opened this email up. But is that true? Like, first of all, now that I think about it, I don't think I've heard of you before. Mm-hmm. And there is really nothing in your body of the email that helps sort of answer the question, who are those mutual connections that you got me so excited about to open this email? Mm-hmm. And then immediately you recognize, and this all happens within a matter of moments, right? Could even be like within it could be within a second, right? Like, and then you just move on to the next email. And it's like that fast. It's like Malcolm Gladwell's Blink. It's like this automatic trigger that you may not even be fully conscious of that gets you to just immediately move on to the next email or the next task, right? So I think the important question here, and then we can get into the rest of it, is like, okay, well, what is real, if it's human-centered connection is what people are desiring, what are the ways in which you can do that authentically? And I can tell you one way that you cannot do that, and that is sort of create a setup with a promise and then not deliver on it in the next stage of the interaction.
That's good information. Just real quick, you said you're not getting a lot of cold calls right now. Is that true?
I have very intentionally hid my cell phone number.
Oh, okay.
I've never
not sure you want to answer this question. Right?
Yeah,
this is
I've
a trap
never
question.
Published it anywhere. There are a lot of people on our team who are receiving cold calls. I am most certainly receiving a lot of cold emails.
Yeah. Okay. Wow, that's good to know then. Hey, Andy, who is sponsoring today's podcast?
Great question. Today's podcast is sponsored by SV Academy, an online sales fellowship program that connects job seekers to employers hiring for full-time sales roles.
Learn more with the link below. All right, so this one, email number 2. So this is more of a soft ask to get on your radar, but also incorporates visuals. So its subject line says update. Hey, Rahim, thanks for connecting. I'm reaching out because I have had several talks with, and I'm guessing that they might have been reaching out to someone at SV Academy, X person and Y person, around SV Academy's IT transformation initiatives due to remote work and security best practices. I wanted to keep you in the loop as I know our paths will cross in the future. Also, congrats on the Series A. Talk soon. So I'd love to get your thoughts. That's incorporating a visual. So it seems like the SDR or AE might have went out and about and found a article that they read.
A gorgeous photo.
There you go.
Gorgeous. There you go.
Maybe
Joe looks particularly gorgeous.
We'd love to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, well, this is definitely better in the sense that I feel more a part of the story because I see Joel and my faces in there. That's the most obvious piece. Like, oh, I like those guys. They're good people. Okay, you've got my attention. I think there's a soft ask, right? Which is like, I'm going to come back to you in the future, right? So just like, hey, just introducing myself. I'm going to come back and ask you for something, probably budget, in the future, and but not right now. So I just want to kind of keep you updated. I think that feels, if that's authentic, right? If you really have had those conversations, and those conversations have been rooted in solving real business problems that we have, and you are trying to introduce yourself as a means of establishing a connection for future value. I think that makes me feel good. Like it feels authentic, right? If all of that is true. I guess the opportunity here in this email is, I understand what's in it for you, but what's in it for me? And I think a missed opportunity here is, you've had these conversations with people on my team around theoretically an important initiative for our business. What did you learn, right? I would be curious about that. I've talked to these two people, on these topics. I want to let you know that there are 3 learnings that I took away. I just want to share those with you in case they're helpful for your decision-making or conversations you're having internally. And as I uncover more learnings, or we make more progress in our conversations, I'll reach back out, right? Yeah. I think that's helpful. Another thing could be, I just wanted to let you know that I spoke to these 2 people on the team, and saying something that makes me feel good about the people on my team. Like, I really enjoyed speaking to this person and that person. If you did indeed enjoy it. Yeah. And, based on what I heard, I think there's the potential for us working together, and the more I learn, the more I'll follow up. Like, as I'm saying this sort of in real time, it's less the content, it's more the context. And the context here is, again, around authenticity, which means not being too far-reaching, right? Like, try to stick to the facts, and try to, you can be aspirational, and you can try to kind of paint a vision for the future, right? But don't be so far-reaching where, if you haven't had the conversations, then don't say you've had conversations. If you've just reached out to people and you haven't had an actual meeting or an actual conversation, don't say that you've had talks with people, right? If you have had talks with people and your solution is still under consideration, then don't say they're pretty close to choosing my solution. Say that we're still grappling with a couple of ideas, which I totally understand. Here are the 2 kind of ideas, or the 2 issues. And just letting you know that, I'm here to work through them, and I hope that it plays out in such a way where we end up supporting you on these initiatives.
I love that. And kind of for me, my main takeaway of this obviously is the authentic communication piece. Nobody wants to speak to kind of the disingenuous, pushy salesperson that is just trying to get something over the line, right? And at the end of the day, like, this is also something very similar to what I currently do. It's a concept called multi-threading. So say you're talking to the first point of contact, and then you want the whole buying circle to be involved. One thing that you really can do, and what I do is, in the subject line, I'll say Rahim follow-up, or my company's follow-up, InsideView follow-up, no action required. Just so that I don't need anything from you right now. Just giving you an update. And then I'll say, I spoke with your team. I love this about them. I think there's this that we can solve, leave you with a good feeling. And then potentially down the line, you'll know me. We'll interact again during the buying cycle, and then we can have a better relationship after that.
Yeah, I like that. And again, it's the frame of, as you said, not being a pushy transactional salesperson. It is being a kind of helpful consultant, problem solver, ally in the decision, which may mean that sometimes you lose a deal. But in the deals where there is an opportunity, you're increasing your win rate, your chances of winning. And most certainly, like down the road, you've probably built some connection. Like you've probably built like a little bit of a connection, a little bit of rapport. And if this is not the right time for the decision, it could be in 6 months, and you're kind of sowing those seeds.
Awesome. So let's move on to some of the voicemails, just from time's perspective. Andy, you want to take this?
I'll take this one. We actually pulled this one from LinkedIn. So if you're in the audience, listen to this. You can actually submit some of your results or questions you have, and then we'll definitely share them in our podcast. So let me read this out. It says, "Hi, Rahim. This is Andy calling from XYZ Company. I listened to Harmon Brothers podcast episode that you were on and resonated with your philosophy to review our history for learnings, as there is nothing new under the sun. I agree with you there. There's no need to reinvent the wheel when we can take learnings from other wins and failures to empower our growth. I understand with COVID putting pressure on everyone's business, many CEOs I've been chatting with have been looking for ways to optimize and accelerate their sales process with less. I'd love to show you how your company, how we've accelerated your competitors' time to market and reduced their sales cycle by 20%. Do you think a conversation between us would make sense?"
And this is a voicemail, right?
This is a voicemail, correct. Any thoughts here? How do you feel about the length as well as kind of the hyper-personalization and the authentic communication part that we just spoke on?
Well, I think I'm seeing elements of like best practices for sure, like within the content. What I would say is, so I did do this podcast recently. I think it's nice to notice that and acknowledge it and speak to it directly. I think what could be better is if there was something both specific and personal that could come out in the very first sort of sentence or two. And why this is important is in an email, you can you can read the email, but you don't read it linearly necessarily. You might actually look at the buzzwords, and your eyes might focus on buzzwords or links, or you could scan, right? And you could take the whole thing in as a complete picture. When it's a voicemail, it's linear. So you're listening to it word by word by word. And so if it's linear, there's a linear story, you have to get to the punchline very, very quickly, because someone may not listen to the whole voicemail, right? So that's where I think the Harmon Brothers podcast, that definitely captures my attention. But then my energy kind of drops when it feels like a platitude. You're responding to this one point that I made, but you're responding to it in a way that feels a little generic. It doesn't feel memorable to me. Like I have a hard time remembering exactly what was I trying to say? Like, when did I say that? But what I'd love is if you could introduce some, like a personal bridge here. So I'm learning something about you. And then I think the optimize and accelerate their sales process with less, it just, again, feels a bit too generic. So I'd love if it was more personalized. I'd love if you could just be more specific, and also, like, when you say, I'm going to show you how we've helped, maybe there could be something that generates some excitement. Like, for example, like we're about to unveil, let's say this was true, we're about to unveil this new product offering, and I'd love to show you first, or like love to show it to you early so you can see under the covers a lot of interesting kind of stuff here that I think would really wow you and wow your team. So probably takes 10 minutes. I'm going to follow up by email and would love to get that done in the next couple of days if it works.
So last one. Hi, Rahim. As a founder of 4 companies and now building the #2 most innovative education company in 2020, SV Academy, you must have your hands full. In addition to keeping a business running and juggling the responsibilities of keeping a newborn alive, I can't imagine how much you wish you had extra time, or even sometimes an extra hand. Here is why XYZ Nanny Company comes in. We would give you an extra hand to free up your time from doing mundane house and baby chores.
You have a nanny that's available right now? This goes straight into like, okay, here's my credit card number. Let's get this set up.
We got a winner.
Yeah, no,
we got a winner.
This definitely, I mean, this gets at a like deep, immediate pain point. But okay, keep going.
Yeah, we give you an extra hand from your time from doing mundane house and baby chores so you can spend more quality time with your family. Do you think a conversation would make sense? Please call me back at yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like the quick feedback is if you can immediately address a pain point within kind of the 10, 20 seconds of a voicemail, since real estate is really important, you're hearing it linearly, it's important to address that value quickly, but then like you said, authentically communicate. Then you'll have more information, more value you can add. Yeah,
most definitely. I feel like, I think it's pretty good. The first couple of paragraphs are pretty good. It does feel authentic to me. You must have your hands full piece feels a little reaching a little for me. Like there's a bit of a spin on it, but I would say it would get my attention. I would keep reading. I think juggling the responsibilities of keeping a newborn alive, that actually was the most engaging. And I actually, if you know that there's a very, very specific problem, I would probably lead with that versus try to use the gimmick of kind of restating my bio to me, right? And then I think the other piece of feedback, is the third paragraph. We would give you an extra hand. Okay, so here is where XYZ Nanny Company comes in. We'd give you an extra hand to free up your time in doing Monday. So here's the thing. I already know that a nanny company, I already understand that a nanny company will give me an extra hand, free up my time, do mundane house and baby chores so that I can spend more quality. I already know that that's the promise of the offer. You're sort of kind of adding noise by sort of restating it. What I think I would prefer to see there is something that's a bit more around the how do you do it? We have 3 nannies in your zip code that are available to be interviewed immediately, and their rates are between this and that. And I've even attached the resume of a few people. And then you might even want to create some scarcity, because the reality is that nannies are very tough to find. And so do you think a conversation might make sense? Listen, I know that these nannies are looking actively. I'd love to match you with them this week. If you're interested, please call me back.
Thank you for listening to the SDR Live podcast. If you like this episode, please share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you tune in next week and have a fantastic week.